podcast for the blog for this year. And we're pleased to say it's with our good friend Nick Triggeggio talking about his latest project. Hey, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no,
always a pleasure.
Yeah, always exciting to have you here.
But yeah, so it's good to have you. It's been an interesting year, but I feel like your project and Secundus it's been a good excuse for me to kind of just go back and kind of make more traditional, just cool looking like gunfighter models, because I think that's kind of what I love to make.
Yeah, for me, part of the project was make something that you can use rules with, but it was the idea of like, I have an idea for a theme, I want to do something cool with it. I don't necessarily want to think of like, oh, what is the most optimum equipment to give X, or oh, maybe I need to give Y. To me, it's now more about models first, then you can think about rules, really. And I think the most successful events in like Inc. 28 or more time kind of always seem to think that way, of like models first, rules later.
Yeah, I certainly think that is true. Because who remembers rules? Don't tend to be that sort of breed that is.
But this is just a question for way of format. We're gonna do a little bit of general talking now,
Yeah,
and
so
then
we'll
say,
probably
hey, we're gonna
stuff like that. Yeah.
We're gonna do the podcast now, and then So don't feel right now, Nick, that you need to get out the best.
Oh yeah, sure. I don't want to let the horse bolt too early, as to so to say.
Yeah. Well, so how do you feel as just sort of random talking points? How do you feel the new Warhammer Quest release, or that was revealed this weekend? Do you think that will influence your creative decisions for?
I think for like anything? There's plenty of I've been getting a lot into Age of Sigmar lately, because I will always have a soft spot for Warhammer 40k, but at the moment it just seems to be Marines. Ooh, a Necron release, and at this point it's like, come on,
there's Marines.
There are a couple of ranges now that have been pretty much languishing. Like, I was very impressed with what they did with the Necron range. Like, that was actually pretty. They went above and beyond there, but I think now they kind of need to maybe think, hey, there's some kits in the NID range, which I think are really quite ancient now. The Eldar range especially. Like, I'm not saying they have to completely revamp them, but I think maybe actually you could still keep the sort of same amazing Jez Goodwin aesthetics, but just make them better proportioned and things like that, and they would sell like hotcakes. It's just a shame, really. I think there's some lines that desperately need revamping, rather than doing, oh, he's a Primus Maximum Ultra Kill Lieutenant with a triple-barreled mega heavy Primaris bolter. It's like, yeah, okay, Marines are cool, and I'm doing a Marine project as well, but I'm finding now more the fringes and of the 40k universe more interesting. And Age of Sigmar is also, it's like, yeah, Stormcasts are poster boys, but actually they're not every year, is it like, entirely new Stormcast range. They are actually releasing really cool new armies, and they seem to be getting weirder and weirder, which is great. I love it.
No, it's true. I mean, I sort of remember near the end of 2020, they talked about early in this new year, they were going to release the Dark Angel Codex and the Dark Eldar Codex, and I was excited, like, oh, maybe, I don't think they do much for the Dark Eldar, but they could do something. And February's almost over, and we've heard almost
they'll
nothing.
Release that plastic Lilith Hesper axe, and that'll be the end.
That'll be it. Well, so that's what they've been doing with the Eldars, just the normal Eldar as well. Every so often, they'll release like a new boxed game of sorts where they have one new character, and at best, if you're lucky, a new unit of something.
They've been releasing like the Phoenix, starting to maybe slowly release Phoenix Lords, and maybe plastic aspect warriors, and they're
Yeah, so
always a
that's-
little bit worse than you would hope after being languishing for 30
Yeah.
years.
Well, gens are. I think that's what they're called. That.
Yeah.
That was a good.
That was a goo update. I'm worried what's
But the
going to
Howling
happen.
Banshees weren't.
They were
No.
like pretty ho hum.
They're okay.
The one thing I'm worried about is that if they eventually get round to Margun Ra, the Dark Reaper, because that model is a classic. Absolutely.
I'm expecting nothing good from that.
Yeah.
They do need new
They've
Dark Reaper models.
updated the Dark Reaper models many times, and everything past some, like the initial Jess Gooden ones, are kind of bad.
Yeah, they're pretty rough.
Or like just.
Well, good thing they haven't updated the Swooping Hawk models since Jez Goodwin.
Yeah, well, they would become worse too, probably. I feel a lot of them, it's just like change for the sake of change, not for anything better.
Well,
Hey, Meandering Shade, nice to have you here.
Hey, Meandering Shade.
Well, I feel with the Swooping Hawks, the best ones were the Goodwin ones, and then they at least one new revamp of them, and they were fine.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
And the Warp Spiders, they haven't changed for a long time. Or they've never changed, I don't think.
Oh, yeah, I think that was one of the biggest sort of things where people keep saying, we want Warp Spiders.
The Howlings, or I was going to say Howling Scorpions. The Striking Scorpions. They've changed multiple times and haven't really gotten better.
Not really.
Yeah.
No. I mean, but
Maybe
Forge World released a new
that's true.
aspect warriors, which are kind of like Swooping Hawk, or not Swooping Hawks, the Warp Spiders, right?
Mm-hmm.
These dudes that float around with big.
Oh yeah, the big lance guys. Yeah, the Shining Spears or something like that.
Well, no,
but
the Shining Spears
are another aspect warrior.
No, because they ride the jet bikes. These other ones didn't.
Oh, jeez, I don't know.
But the Forge World aspect warriors were back when they still had good sculptors doing the infantry models.
Oh my god!
Like, so they're pretty old.
Yeah, it's a while ago.
It's so weird. It's like at the moment, I feel like we're actually in the death rattle of heresy. Like, it's this kind of thing of like, oh yeah, we've got loads more black books to come, and then they some of the stuff they previewed, like those word bearer sculpts they previewed early last year. I remember sitting on a stream with you guys talking about the word bearer sculpts, and they still haven't released them. And those Night Lord Terminators have just been released, and half the Dark Angel stuff, like the weird plasma gun squad, is no longer in stock anymore. And I'm like, I just don't know what's going on. Like,
I was gonna say the death rattle of heresy sounds like a good thing.
Yeah, not to some of the certain people on Instagram. I wouldn't say that, but it's just interesting.
You might argue that it's been dead for a long time. It's just the people
Kill Horus Heresy shapes up and does more interesting stuff.
Because there was a golden age, like when the Solar Auxilia came out. Because I followed the sculptor on Instagram who did the Solar Auxilia. Is Ed Scomo, I think, or I can't remember his name, who did the Auxilia, but he showed a couple of unreleased designs.
Edgar Strakowski, I don't.
But it was I follow him on Instagram, and he showed a couple of sculpts that, like, there was a character who's meant to have this walking frame, like this exo walking frame, because he's so old as a Solar Auxilia commander. Looked absolutely fantastic, but. Never. I just didn't see why. I was like, why did this not get released? It's a fantastic mini. Like, I saw the sculpt and everything. And and again, like, I'm not privy to the economics. I don't know the whole thing. I'm sure there's a whole raft of complex reasons, but it just seems now like
the pandemic hasn't helped.
No, definitely not.
Nice to have you here, Ira. Yeah, so the pandemic has kind of ground GW to a halt. Made it much harder for them to, release things, and
But
to
it's
keep stuff in stock. But like the Horus Heresy slowly dying, it was slowly dying before
but it
the
was
pandemic.
that's kind of my point. Like, I understand. I'm not saying, oh, GW need to be putting out loads more. Very, very understanding in regards to like a pandemic does not make anything easy. But the year before, I remember talking with you on a podcast about we were getting these tiny drips of Space Wolf release, and well, yeah,
Were awful.
and they were terrible. And I remember there was an absolute furor about them, and they actually had to go back and do some resculpting on some of the bolters and one of the characters, and it's just like,
well, thankfully, it was really easy for them to do because they were just digitally sculpted.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I guess really easy, but they still was probably kind of costly having to remake silicone molds and all that. So it still wasn't like, something they wanted to do.
My controversial opinion is I think you should let GW handle the bog standard plastic in, like put the infantry all in plastic, and you have some resin upgrade kits for stuff, but like Legion specific. But I just look at the Prospero boxes and the Calth boxes, Dreadnought notwithstanding. You look at them, and they're so much easier to use bits wise. I don't like resin. Resin is a massive annoyance, especially if I want to do a big conversion. But I will deal with it if I have to. And it just seems a bit like they could put out really cool detailed upgrade kits and cool vehicles, and let GW kind of have those molds that are able to be turned over quickly, and that they could keep restocking the plastic basic stuff.
Well, I mean, because that's honestly what Forge World has been doing with Necromunda.
Yeah, and I've been really like, again, there's the quality varies, but some of the Necromunda stuff Forge World does extremely cool, like that Rogue Doctor, and some of the Blood Bowl stuff are things like it's not always my aesthetic, but I do appreciate that some of the best models now, because people are saying, oh, Forge World's dead, and I'm like, well, have you looked at their specialist game stuff? Like, they're producing great stuff for specialist games, like Titanica scenery and things like that. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, Tyra, it is cool that GW finally has sort of went back and updated Slaanesh a little bit for Age of Sigmar. And I, too, would like to see the Emperor's Children redone to some capacity. Like, if they're going to be releasing Space Marine after Space Marine, I would much rather them not just release another new Primaris that just has a bigger bolt rifle and... made
an
like,
armpit
work
missile
with the Noise
or
Marines a little bit, or created just some general Emperor's Children models, or updated those horrible Khorne Berserker models that have been around for over 20 years and weren't good when they were first released.
Despite
That's some ancient history.
They're remarkable.
It does seem like, Nurgle and Khorne are the two that get the most.
But mainly just Nurgle?
Now,
if we're talking about 40K.
Mainly Nurgle.
Yeah.
No, I guess they released Emperor's, or not Emperor's Children, the Thousand Suns. They did.
Thousand Suns wasn't bad.
Stuff.
They were the kind of the first Chaos Marines that were a little bit embiggened.
Well, they made the only Noise Marine they've made for a long time was the one with the remake of the one dude with the guitar, and he even won Model of the Year on Games Workshop's voting shit. But and he was fine, but that one model isn't enough to.
No.
Unless you're willing to buy a lot of that model and do a lot of chopping.
Well, come on,
the Noise Marine stuff.
You just have to resculpt the stuff yourself. Come on, you can do it. Like
you've done enough.
I'll give you a week, Nick.
Oh my goodness! Oh wow, that could be your new challenge. Like that could be the new challenge. But this is the thing. It's like going back to the Age of Sigmar point. Is you look and the gods have all had their own kind of major release. Like Nurgle, to a lesser extent, but Tzeentch had a big release. Khorne was one of the poster boys in the beginning of Age of Sigmar, and Slaanesh is now having this huge release of stuff, which I think is, and it just feels like because they're not weighted down as much with the history and the law integrity of with Age of Sigmar, they can do these absolutely bananas stuff. And no one's going to say, well, actually, I think you'll find that the Stirland 5th unit of Empire soldiers had a yellow duck on their left shield rather on their right. Something like that. And you're just like, it's not historical wargaming. It's a miniatures game. You could do what you want.
Yeah. When Age of Sigmar came out, wasn't it like rumored that Slaanesh was like in prison somewhere, or like they were hardly mentioned, or am I remembering?
Yeah, they were, and
it was hardly mentioned, and then they started doing little teasers and things like that, and then suddenly it's like boom. Though I'm quite pleased that they're now leaning more towards with Slaanesh to the more interesting side of Slaanesh, because the whole like current side, which a lot of the community seems to think of, like with the all like oh ha 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 boobs and things like that, the quite puerile. They're leaning more towards like gluttony, like avarice, like excess with like perfumes and smell and stuff. And it's a significantly better concept than like
there's a lot
of people seem to think of Slaanesh.
There's a lot they could do with it. It looks like they're at least starting to branch out a little more. And even the route for just like boobs and ass, like this new release, I think has done all of that a lot better as well. Like it's much more interesting.
The latest Keeper of Secrets, absolutely phenomenal model. I think it's an absolutely stunning demon model, like really cool. Nice model. And it just it's kind of, it's got that nice aspect of it's like it's weirdly sensual, but it's also quite uncomfortable. It's got that uncanny valley vibe to it. Of you can understand this thing rather than some of the older sculpts or that famous Forge World Keeper of Secrets sculpt.
Oh
yeah.
I honestly forgot about that model.
Probably best that you have forgotten.
It was pretty well sculpted.
It was well sculpted,
whether you like it or not.
Well, I remember that they gave you the hair for it that you had to bend yourself.
It's
pretty
all
cool.
Cables. If you have guns with cables bought from Forge World, be prepared. You've got to get that boiling water out, and you've got to carefully bend that resin.
Or that heat gun.
True.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Nick, do you like resin better than old metal miniatures? Which do you like better working with?
Resin, because it's easier to cut with my hobby saw. But I also don't like that some resin where I literally have to look at a detail and it will snap off. Like some of the really fine bits. It's just like you just have to sneeze in its general direction, and it's suddenly like, oh, I've snapped, and you're like, oh god damn it. And then you have to try and glue it on, and because it has like a tiny contact point, it's just like, this is a nightmare. I might as well just cut this detail off and just pretend it never existed.
Yeah, I hear that. Or those details are just broken off to begin with and are either lost in
the bag.
Yeah.
Well, so what's the thought? We should probably soon start.
We
can probably go into the podcast. But Tyra, working with metal miniatures is pretty awful.
Yeah, I just trimmed and assembled that old orc knob from like Games Day, and like it had been at least a year since I really did work with Bedlam. Oof. It's a pain.
Random spiky bits. You just suddenly like, oh, why am I bleeding? Oh, the metal model has enacted a tithe on me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even just cutting off the mold lines is hard because since there's more resistance with the metal, it's easy to kind of cut it in a jagged way and then trying to sand it down.
You need sandpaper and other shit to make it
just awful.
Nice. Yeah.
But yeah, I feel we could get into the episode of the podcast here. If people are ready, I'm going to just play the intro music and then get on into it.
Yep, I'm ready.
All right. Sounds good. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Dragged into Turbolasers, a miniature wargaming podcast by the people behind the blog Between the Bolter and Me. My name's Eric Wire, and I'm here tonight with my two brothers, Adam Wire.
Hey, everyone.
Greg Wire.
Hey, everybody.
And I'm excited to have our friend K0rdhal here. How's it going?
Oh, very good. Very good. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you here. Great to have you here. Like, I feel, honestly, you were in our last episode of this podcast at the end of 2020, and somehow we haven't recorded anything since. But I feel this is a strong start to the new year.
Oh, well, I'm very flattered. Thank you.
Yeah, and one of the main reason we thought that we could bring you on here is that, well, while you're always, I feel, working on something cool model-wise, which is easily found on your Instagram account, but one of the more recent things you started was sort of a Necromunda setting that you've dubbed Zone Secundus, and we thought it would be fun to have you on here to talk a little bit about that and what were, some of the inspirations and what's going on there. So, I mean, I guess to start with that, what can you tell us about Zone Secundus?
So it was quite interesting. I was reading one of my favorite hobby sites for sort of more generalized hobby. I was reading Goonhammer, which I really, really like. Great site. I really recommend them. And I was reading, they were talking about like their own idea for like Necromunda called Lost Settlements or something like Lost Zones. And it was from a tweet from the original designer of Necromunda, who was saying like he likes the design of current Necromunda, but he says it feels more like well-funded paramilitaries going up against each other than gangs. And they said like, oh, we're going to do something more. We'll develop a rule set for something a little bit more sort of pared back, a bit more akin to original Necromunda. And like, I think each sort of setting style has its own merits. This is not me saying, oh, modern Necromunda is terrible. I think it's actually a cool system. But I just kept thinking about that. And I was like, there's this whole lore about the Hive Secundus with the gene stealer infection, and it's inevitably being like it gets nuked from orbit. But they mention in the end that there are survivors, and there's also degenerate like gene stealer monsters left over in the ruins, like fighting each other. And I just thought the mantra I came up with is sort of like blades and bullets rather than plasma pistols and power swords. And that's the kind of thing I wanted to do, a setting where a bolt gun is a weapon that is venerated as a relic, and it's a weapon of absolutely devastating power. Same with, like, say, a plasma pistol or a plasma gun, rather than something that 6 of your gang have and just kind of sling around like it's nobody's business. So that was kind of the seed idea for it. And then I took some of my favorite influences, like the Metro novels and games, Metro 2033, the Stalker stuff, a little bit of Fallout, the more grim side of Fallout, and just started to run. And like, of course, some of the stuff like the pictures of the exclusion zone in Chernobyl, the actual fantastic TV series Chernobyl, like that whole bit where they're diving into the reactor to turn the coolant pipes off. Was a huge inspiration. It kind of just went from there and lodged itself into my brain and sort of metastasized into this.
You haven't come up with your own like soda or pop brand to go along with the setting, like Nuka-Cola, in the vein of not the serious aspect of Fallout?
No, not yet. I'm sure I could do some tongue-in-cheek references. But,
not yet. This is exciting.
Yeah, soon I'll be launching my own brand of cola. You can buy now. No, I don't have the time for that.
No, I hear that. No, but so that's a good idea. Like, I feel that is some of those notions of, wow, new Necromunda is cool. It seems less like gangs in like brutal like warfare, and it like.
Well, do you think that's? I mean, I guess the rules have certainly changed a little bit, but not super dramatically. Do you think some of that is primarily just due to how they're trying to present the lore, in which like all of the different gangs are actually these larger, more well organized factions that handle some aspect of commerce on Necromunda.
I feel
like
they're really trying to make their IP more unique and make something like this is very distinctly this gang, that gang, etc. Because I mean, in the past, I still think all the gangs did have a very visually interesting, unique take on them, but like they weren't. Not all of them were exactly.
There was a
unique.
lot of commonalities between them, especially equipment-wise. Like each gang kind of had a unique thing that they could have. Like the Vansar could have a plasma cannon and things like that. But now I kind of understand that like each house has to be. There are weapons that are shared between houses, but even the weapons between them are. One house's auto gun is completely different to the next house's auto gun, etc., etc. And I think it's a cool thing, and I think it's like I love some of the aesthetics and the lore, but I just think there's also a place for something a bit more downtrodden and a bit less guys with hyper stealth trench coats against guys toting more plasma guns than a Space Marine Devastator squad.
Yeah.
So I don't remember the lore of Hive Secundus. I mean, you touched on it a little bit. But is it like close to the main?
So
the main hives on Necromunda? It's
close to Hive Primaris. It's like it's probably a big distance. It's planetary scale, but it's kind of like surrounded by this huge ring of fortifications and like levies and conscripts to keep whatever is still in.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Is it called Hive Primaris or is it like Primus?
Hive Primus, sorry, not Hive Primaris. That would have been a weird slip of the tongue there.
That would be fantastic. Like, the hive was built around the big statue of Primaris, which Games Workshop venerates above all.
I'm sure there is a Hive Primaris somewhere in the fluff.
I'm sure. But yeah, okay, so continue. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. There is a distance, but there's like all these rumors about tunnels connecting the two, and it's how the Gene Stealer infection kind of gets into Hive Primus. Like you can, in a really cool move, which is really nice of the specialist games, like you can have Gene Stealer infected versions of your gangs. You can have actual Gene Stealer gangs. Hell, I think there's even rules that your Gene Stealer gang can fall to chaos as well, like which is a really, really nice sort of throwback to sort of old fluff and prevents some really, really great conversion opportunities.
So yeah, again, so this setting is just kind of a callback to sort of maybe some of the older versions of Necromunda and the notion where it is like brutal gang warfare where like they're not necessarily well equipped and a lot more downtrodden.
Not backed by these larger like corporations or something, or if they were, it's since kind of gone to shit due to the nuclear fallout and all that stuff.
It's just also I wanted something, again, following from the Metro franchise, I wanted something more cramped. Like the kits, there's some beautiful scenery and stuff like that, but it kind of forces you to play a different style in my head. Like if you are playing in really cramped tunnels rather than on a walkway firing volleys at each other, it kind of forces you to think, okay, maybe I will gear more of my guys towards melee because I am fighting in this cramped space, and actually a sniper rifle, if you're crawling around tunnels, a sniper rifle is not your first choice of weapon, is it? You guys know more about firearms than I do, but even I know that you don't want to be lugging around a giant long-range sniper rifle when you could be fighting an enemy literally 10 foot away who's got a shotgun or something like that.
Well, most of Games Workshop weapons are kind of akin to that. Their las pistols are bigger than normal rifles, so like you're gonna have some issues regardless of what you.
I was gonna say, depending on the setting, I mean, like if we're talking about like a Call of Duty warfare sort of thing, like everybody would have a sniper rifle, and it doesn't matter the distance. You just get up and pop off a couple shots. Yeah.
But yeah, I hear what you're saying. Like I feel by just like focusing on a particular type of setting that can really influence how people are going to interact with it, and can really do a lot to make a neat narrative hook that can help get other players excited about it and all on the same page.
Well,
Like-
what sort of, or I was going to ask, what sort of gangs you've started to explore?
So I have an absolute love for the Stalker franchise. It's one of my favorite series of games, and I love the book Roadside Picnic that the Stalker franchise is based off of. And I just love this idea of kind of people in cobbled together environmental suits scrabbling through for like things that would you take for granted, like things that allow you to drink clean water and that kind of thing. So I just it's the idea of allowing to me make almost like a more generic gang, which would allow me to sort of explore different archetypes within that gang rather than thinking, oh, aesthetically, I have to do this because of this is what house XYZ looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to also shout out another big inspiration was the Sump Hulk setting, which is also along the similar vein. And I think it's set up by the guy who does amazing Soul Vince on Instagram. He does amazing scenery. I'm part of their Discord. And the stuff he's doing, his stuff is a bit less apocalyptic. And it is also taking a different tact. But it's still a fantastic and has had some really evocative stuff come out of it. Especially it's Grim and Gribbly on Instagram has done some amazing mushroom-infected gangers, which are absolutely fantastic. So I'm not the only person sort of dabbling around with this idea, but it's really cool to see that it's kind of sort of spreading its tendrils around.
Also, I guess with that in mind, so this zone Secundus like setting you're working on. If you look around on your Instagram, it's very much apparent that you're encouraging other people to like get in there and like make their own weird takes on models and stuff and just kind of explore that more dejected side of like hive fighting, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And is that kind of one of the main plans for this, that you're hoping just people all over will make their own models to build up this setting?
Basically, I want it to be open. Like, I think the main mantra I want people to realize is, again, the one I said, blades and bullets, and make it desperate, downtrodden, really just kind of, you look, I really what I should do is set up sort of like a setting board or something, a post with like all the aesthetic or like fluff inspirations I can find so people kind of know what I'm thinking. And I think I've sort of created a touchstone.
You could make a Patreon and
no,
make a Patreon and add some mood boards.
Yeah, no, I will not be doing that. Thank you. It's a great idea, but no.
But yeah, I think that would be cool. Like you could have just on Instagram or something, have some inspiration mood like stuff just to help.
Yeah.
You know.
But I want it to be, I don't want to be, I am not the final arbiter. I am not going to, if you make a gang thing, as long as it kind of fits with the theme, and even then, I'm not going to message you and be like, no, you can't do this. This doesn't fit my vision. This is a shared thing. Like, if you want to say XYZ exists in Secundus, of course, there's probably millions of miles of tunnels and all sorts of nooks and crannies. Who's to say that doesn't exist in Secundus? And I don't want to be the person to be like, no, that doesn't fit my vision. Like, there will be some stuff I might say, okay, that's not my vision for Secundus, but if it's yours, go ahead, have fun. Like, that's my thing, basically. Like, I want it to be as open as possible and it to be a playground for people to play in and maybe think outside the box a little bit.
I think that's cool because in some sense it also is just generally encouraging people to relook at Necromunda and realize like it's an entire hive world and there are probably tons, like a whole globe worth of secondary spires and things that almost have to have very diverse life and settings and whatnot. And even if they're still influenced by, let's say, the Van Saar's technology in some way or the drug trade through House Escher, like there would still be smaller gangs and things that are all open for people to explore and just kind of try to create cool models based on whatever they're excited about at the time.
Somewhere there's a hive where there are teenage motorcycle gangs, right?
Yes, Akira. I would love that. Would be great. Like, if all honesty, if they came out with an Akira style motorcycle gang for like weird ash waste racing, I wouldn't be mad. Like, I think it would be damn cool. Fighting clown bikers and things like that.
Yeah.
Like, who would be mad with that? If it was a callback to Akira, go ahead, definitely.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't fit too well in your cramped radioactive confines of...
I mean, there might be some cool tunnels and stuff they could race around in.
Yeah, maybe like a nice 20-meter long tunnel not filled with ruins, so you could just go back and forth and have some death-defying street races in the one unflooded, unruined tunnel.
Yeah. Well, in addition to just this general idea of developing a setting and sharing it through Instagram and other means with hashtag Zone Secundus, right? That's
yes.
In addition to that, are you encouraging people to play games in the setting amongst friends, or
I would really love that to happen. Like, for me, I want to I recently bought the Necromunda rulebook, and I need to get another rulebook for the sort of the gangs and to work out what equipment means what. But I would like eventually to be kind of develop a framework. Again, not something that is super restrictive, but even then you can kind of, I think it's pretty easy to think, okay, you don't have to choose the best weapons. You're going to think, okay, I'm going to change the rarities that are available in the trading post, so I move everything up a rarity. So actually las guns are pretty rare, or plasma guns become extremely rare and extremely expensive. But again, it's a framework. If someone comes along and develops a really cool system and I really like it, I'll be like, hey, guys, check out this system, or so-and-so has come up with some rules. And I just want people to experiment. I want people to make things that are weird, have fun, do all sorts of things within the setting.
Well, already lots of people have started making cool, interesting conversions and stuff with the hashtag. So I guess this is sort of another thing. This podcast is sort of like a call to action. Like, I'm sure there are tons of people out there who were thinking they wanted to do something with Necromunda. Well, you can, and you should, and it should be your own cool take on stuff.
Definitely.
I mean, I guess with COVID sort of shutting down travel and group events, it kind of makes this challenging. But do you foresee it as something that you might try to get a group together at some point, later on in the year or whenever?
100%. I would love to do, say, like a Warhammer World style event where like, I'm thinking later this year, I would like to get hold of some of that Zone Mortalis plastic terrain and try and make a really, really modular, really cramped board. Like, I want to see how small a board could you make that was still kind of like you could have interesting and cool games on. And I think one of my people I talk to a lot on Instagram, at the Empyrean, he's already dabbling in like kind of he's got some small tiles and some of the scenery, and he's already dabbling on making like a multi-layered, very compact modular board, which I think is excellent. Because it's the kind of thing of like, I really would like to be able to, when this is all over, set something up and say, hey, I'm going to do this at Warhammer World. Please come along. Like, we can book some stuff. Like, there'll be sort of a main thing, or we might have an arbitrator or something like that. But hey, come along, do some side games. It'll be great to meet you all. Let's all talk. We can talk about it. I want to see your gangs. Because that's the thing. This is what I really want to see. People have started coming up with ideas. Like, there's a recent one of a guy who wears a Gene Stealer skull, and he's a wandering trader, and he believes the Gene Stealer skull protects him. It's bits like that. I was like, I didn't think of that. And that's damn cool,
awesome.
And that's part of the reason why I don't want to have like an explicit vision outside of those tenets, because it lets people come up with stuff that you had not thought about, and you're like, damn, I wish I'd thought about that. That's so cool.
That's cool, and I feel is a nice, just a way to get people to think about Necromunda and all the weird, I don't know, in some sense, domestic 40K stuff, and how they could incorporate some of their own life experiences into the game. And now I feel that Necromunda, or the newer version, has been out for a couple of years now. They've been just adding more and more content, not all of it just strictly the basic gangs.
Yeah.
So there's, I feel, a lot of plastic models and stuff that you can work with, which is helpful, I think.
It's also been fun trawling through my bits box, and there's some stuff that have kind of has languished there, like some of your favorite models of all time, the 5-pound plastic chaos cultists. I know you absolutely adore those guys, but like one of my more recent models for Secundus, the beaky guy with the crank powered las gun, that was based off a cultist. I did a lot of chopping, but it's been really nice to look through my bits box, and there's been bits where I'm like, oh, that doesn't fit X, that doesn't fit Y, and then suddenly I'm like, oh, that would be perfect for this if I add this or I did this. And it's just been a lot of fun to actually try and think outside the box almost, and rather than thinking, oh, I want this shiny new thing and I'll do Y, go, okay, I've not used this figure, let me think of something cool I could do with it.
Yeah.
Also, the crow person that you made that you just mentioned, so is he to actually have like a beak, or is it to be like a helmet? Like,
I riffed off
that up for you.
It's entirely, you don't know. The Crow Man is a mysterious fellow. He walks bare feet through the underhive. Like that, how has he not got tetanus and all sorts of different things? But I just really aesthetically loved there's an amazing piece of art by one of my favorite artists called Keith Thompson that has like these plague doctors, like with weapons trying to defeat this horrendous plague. And that was really sort of evocative to me, but also the generic sort of 16th century, 17th century plague doctors. There's such a striking aesthetic. I was like, how can I channel it without it kind of being too on the nose, really?
Well, and he has some piece of technology on his back, which, looking at that, kind of reminds me of Roadside Picnic and Stalker, like people delving into some dangerous zone to try to get alien technology to sell on the black market, and that's what that kind of reminds me of.
Oh, but that's the vibe I wanted.
Yeah, you don't really understand what it is, but that's fine. Love it. No, yeah, so I think it's a great opportunity to get in there and do like cool, interesting stuff.
Well, I mean, I guess sort of with that in mind, we're at least starting to use it as an opportunity to re-explore some of the older stuff that we had created, particularly with this. The Church of the Red Athenaeum was a kind of weird cult of the Imperial Creed that we had sort of designed, I guess, back in 2016.
Oh man, when the Pilgrim was about,
for the Pilgrim stuff. But just a weird cult that's primarily on Terra, but has slowly been spreading out throughout the galaxy, and thought, this would be a fun opportunity to look back at that and see how, Necromunda might change there.
Yeah, and it fits perfectly because I wanted that. Again, and like another thematic touchstone with Secundus is like they have been isolated for quite a while. Of course, you're still going to have the crazy emperor-loving zealots or people who worship the emperor in a more weird way, but you're going to start getting other strange cults and things like that. You'll get people who might worship water filters and things like that, or remnants of guilds that suddenly have really strange ideas and things like that. And it's just a way that, without having to say, oh, these guys are going to be hunted down and burnt as heretics by the Inquisition or the Enforcers, you can explore that. If you want, like Kitback Cat on Instagram has a group of like ghouls who worship the radiation, and that's a really cool idea. Like it's a fantastic idea, and it's something that I'm really keen to see how she explores it further.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good idea.
So the church will fit right in, and I'm interested to see how they've been changed, being trapped in an irradiated hellhole.
Yeah, no, it's true, and not having easy communication towards sort of the other branches back on Terra. Yeah, and so honestly, I feel I need to do a little bit more soul searching and thinking about how things have changed. Well, this is kind of somewhat related thing, but how do you feel when you think about Necromunda now? Do you think of it in the same universe where the Crucius Maledictum, or whatever the rift that opened up across the galaxy, do you think of that in the same 40K universe that has occurred and how that has influenced
I think
Necromunda? And have they written about that? Like, I haven't read much of
I think there might be some
40K lore.
hints, but I like the fact that it's not necessarily explicitly declared. I think that's the fun thing. Is I think, like, again, 40K, like with the narrative progress, it's interesting, but they're in danger of hemming themselves in, I think, with too much filling in those gaps. Like with Necromunda, those gaps are not all filled in at all. Like, there's loads. I was reading the rulebook, and the fluff in the rulebook is excellent. And there's stories of all these different hives where something terrible has happened to them, or there's some weird rumors about the skeleton of this hive and XYZ. And it's just fantastic. They don't go, oh yeah, this was caused by blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah. It's hinted at. So you get 6 hobbyists in a room. They might all have different ideas, but none of their ideas is canonically right. And that's fantastic, because you want that gap filling. You want to think, oh, what would XYZ do in this situation, rather than they say, oh, this house occupied this hive and they did this and they did that, and so I have to do Y.
Yeah, it's nice just to have it as a small thing that can open up possibilities for just the things you want to explore, but not, because most of the planets and stuff throughout the Imperium, while they would probably be influenced by this, they wouldn't have like a large amount of knowledge describing like, oh, why this has happened and what we're going to do about it and how we're going to be okay. Like, it's just another awful thing that has made their life a little bit worse, in a life that is generally characterized by things getting worse.
Worse, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I feel there's a lot of cool stuff just looking at the hashtag there.
No, but lots of people are getting excited.
Are there other things that you're excited to do? Like, are you going to continue creating some from the warbands you have, or do you have additional ideas of stuff that you want to do in the future, or that sort of thing?
I'd like to create like a modular scenery board, definitely. Something that I involve a lot of cutting of Zone Mortalis tiles, and something that I can just rearrange. But there's all sorts of things. Like, I want to try and add like wandering monsters that explore some of the more monstrous side of like what happens to a gene stealer cult that its patriarch is dead, but it's been trapped in irradiation, and they might not have as much control over their genes as a well-funded gene stealer cult does. Like, what happens to them? Do they become a new weird form of life? Do they move away from the cult's influence? Do they not? Can they be classed as like a Tyranid vanguard organism? What happens to them? What happens to the mutants who were probably down there in the Underhive when the Hive got nuked? Like, what things have crawled out of it? I always love it. It's like a very cosmic horror bent. I always love the idea of like some disaster happening and opening up something that has been sealed for ages for a reason, and something nasty coming out. Like, there's so many different opportunities, and yeah, like, I just want to see that, and I want to explore sort of the more gribbly side. I have, like I've mentioned in a few snippets, the Leech Men, who I don't know what they are. I've barely mentioned them, but I've started to develop ideas of these awful sort of pallid, blind mutants that, like the Leech Man in I think it was X-Files, doesn't have bones, so they can like move through really small spaces. And I've even been thinking of like, oh, how biologically would they work? What would they do? What would they feed on? Where would they live? And things like that. And that's just that's the reason why I sort of came up with this. It's a playground. I don't want anyone to think that their idea or like their creepy mutant or something is bad. Like
all
I don't know.
Creepy mutants are welcome here.
Yeah, all creepy mutants are welcome here. Hell, like one of my gangers is a horrendously mutated thing, but it's kind of as I wrote in the post, like, you can't be choosers. If you've got this big guy who can wield a block of rockcrete as a flail, you're not going to turn your nose up at him, despite if he means the difference between survival or being eaten by some hideous thing in the dark. Like, they don't even have that luxury of prejudice in a way.
Boys, is anybody searching the depths of the irradiated hive, going deeper and deeper, looking for rumors of some mysterious artifact that can grant their wishes? Is anyone doing something like that?
I want to explore that sort of, not as explicitly as that, but I think it's a cool thing. Like, one of the ideas I had for like a theme for a campaign is the rumors of like a lost or mothballed like inter-hive rail, like in the event of a disaster, to move government officials between hives, like some armored with rumors of like thousands of military rations and weapons and all sorts of things. And whether it exists, you don't know, but it's this kind of point of faith. But I also want to explore, like, put in some creepy, more psychic stuff, like what happens when a hive of millions of people is instantly annihilated. Like, there's going to be something happening in the warp, and there's probably going to be ghosts, weird artifacts like crystallized warp matter, and things like us,
they're like
trapped
in shards of glass,
like awful things, like someone's. Like Flex, or someone's like a technician working on a cogitator, and he's flash fried and the cogitator survives, but it contains some echo of him, or something. It does something weird now. That's the kind of thing I want to also have. So there's all sorts of things that can be scrabbled for in the depths.
You should start writing a short story or a novel to go along with your setting.
I would.
You have
I'm not
so many
long form.
Well, I mean, you have to start somewhere. Like, every model that you post on Instagram, you have some really evocative piece of text or story to go along with it. So, like, I feel you certainly have the ability to do that. You just need to force yourself into doing it.
For me, I just like thinking about the motivation, even if it's a small piece. I'm like, what is this character? What has he gone through? Why is he there? Because then, especially even when I'm just making the conversion, I can't make a conversion now and complete it without thinking of a story or why this thing exists.
Yeah, no, that's great. Have you considered, I don't know, like starting up a Discord group or something to help give people a more centralized place to post things? I mean, certainly the hashtag Zone Secundus is a way that, you know, people can do that and get in contact with people who they like what they're seeing. But have you considered a slightly more formal thing? Like,
that's actually a really good
Discord?
idea. I actually hadn't thought of that. So I actually think over the next few days I'll set one up, and then of course I'll post about it. So I might try and make it invite only, again, to kind of control, allow for sort of a control, because Instagram is a big community, and I don't necessarily want bad apples ruining the sort of the barrel, really. But yeah, I'll definitely set one up.
Yeah, but I mean, just if you like watching people who are starting to produce
definitely.
stuff, I feel it would be.
I will send out the invitations to them, definitely.
Because I feel that might be also just a way to let people know that, like, we're all kind of excited in the generative process together, and how we can all inspire each other to keep pushing and look at different other things. I think that's obviously a strength of the internet as a whole. Being able to communicate easily.
What I really want to encourage, and something I've had a lot of fun with the War of the False Primarch, of like, I want people to be able to reach out to each other and say, hey, I really like your gang. Do you mind if I make you this model? Or I want to make a model that reflects your gang. And then I would hope that the other person would go, oh yeah, I really like your gang. Let me try and do something of my own vision of it. And that's what I kind of really want to encourage, sort of like a nice, just two-way flow of ideas between people.
No. Yeah, well, that sounds great. I think that just allows everyone to keep pushing each other's ideas and think about things maybe from a slightly different angle and develop it further. Because the different perspectives help a lot, I think.
Yeah, and as I said before, I don't want it to be restricted. Your vision is just as valid as mine or someone else's, and I want to see the weird. I want to see the crazy. I want to see the stuff that people come up with in the community. And I've already been so impressed with some of the people. Like before I'd even, I think, put together a model fully for Zone Secundus, and I just made the post about it. People were already just like that off the starting gate, and it's just been fantastic to see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it's been really fun just sort of watching as it develops naturally over time. And hopefully, maybe even with this podcast, it will allow people to hear just a little bit more from you, what you were thinking about it, and just keep pushing this forward and get people excited to dive back into Necromunda again, even if there aren't like new Games Workshop releases.
Yeah, and I would just encourage, just spread the word. If you've got a friend, anyone who's listening, if you've got a friend or you've got some hobby group that you think might be interested, you're like, hey, we've been playing X for a while. I found this. I'm a bit interested. Just spread it around. Like my DMs are open. Drop me a message on Instagram or any of the platforms you have me on, and I will happily answer questions, give you ideas, look at cool models and whatnot. Like I absolutely love it.
Yeah, no, I mean that sounds great.
And
I'm
plus, I would
excited
love to
to
be back on the podcast and talk more about it as things develop.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
yeah,
we'll
no,
have
I
you
think
back
that
for
would
it.
be fun to have you back on again a few months down the line and see where things have gone. Hopefully by that point we will have made some more models too. And I mean, admittedly, I have some of this Zone Mortalis terrain here that
Get on it.
I need to paint, so maybe I can do some of that too.
Well, I've been very excited seeing the preview images of Adam's gunslinger, the one-armed gunslinger, which is already incredibly evocative. The name itself. So I'm really excited to see how the church progresses and what sort of what ideological fractures have occurred in Secundus.
Yeah, I'm excited to do more.
I'm excited too. I
also have to give a big shout out to Red Wet Skeleton. He made me a piece of music for Secundus, which is very, very cool. I need to work out how to sort of show it off because I don't know about Instagram's uploading things and music and things like that. But I'm sure I can sort something out, even if it is just a link to the SoundCloud and Discord. And also, big thank you to Fevered Velvet. She is a graphics designer and she made the font for me for Zone Secundus, which I really, really appreciate.
Yeah, no, it's great. All right. Yeah, well, that was fun talking with you about this stuff. Do you have any last things that you'd like to say before we wrap this up?
Well, what I'd like to say is, like, I hope things sort of calm down and we'll be able to start sort of seeing hobbyists in person again. But yeah, I just run with it. I want to provide a creative canvas. Just go with it. Do something cool. Show me. Post about it. Talk about it. Come up with ideas and subsettings. Just, I really want to see what this community can do because I know everyone in the community, especially the Ink 28 and the Necromunda, is fantastically creative. So basically, just do it. Don't worry, like, oh, I don't think I'm skilled enough, or oh, I don't know whether this is appropriate. Just try it out. That's what I wanted to be, rather than building a regiment. My main thing is think of each character in your gang as a character, an individual with wants and hopes, and you can't really go wrong.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that sounds great. That's the type of 40K I like best. All right. Yeah, well, again, thanks for joining us, everyone. Thanks for being here, K0rdhal. And everyone make sure to follow him on Instagram, but we'll have all those details in the descriptions below. But yeah, thanks everybody.
Thank you for having me.
All right, it's done. We did it.
Woo! Oh, that was a lot of fun. I waxed lyrical there, but it's nice to talk about it. No, I can't exactly talk to my parents about it. They'll look at me with very confused sort of looks.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Var.
Yeah, thanks for popping in.
Yeah, but it was good to hear a little bit more about it. And I don't know, yeah, Necromunda just has, in kind of all just Hive sort of related stuff, has a lot of sort of untapped potential, I think.
It's just super interesting. I think there's just such it's a vector for telling more personal stories. I think it's why things like More Time still stand up to the test of time, because it's more personal. And like it is fun, and there are aspects of that within 40k, but it's not so much. Like when you've got an army of like 50 dudes, it's hard to think, oh, this guy does this and this story links to that and things like that.
This isn't really related to that, but humorously, I forgot to press record at the first like 10 seconds of the podcast, but I started before the intro music
fantastic.
was done, so I'll be able to easily crop it out.
I thought you were about to say that you forgot to press record
any of it,
and I was just going to be like, oh.
Well, if I would have failed that badly, we would have just extracted the audio from the YouTube stuff. But
yeah.
Thank God.
Other stuff, like perhaps you all saw that on Kickstarter, Free League has a project for the second edition of the One Ring RPG. Is anyone excited about that? Like, who likes Lord of the Rings? Like, I didn't even read Lord of the Rings. Like, I always thought the art for the original edition was quite good, and it kind of elevated it beyond just the standard tropes of what the movies made it to be.
I like Lord of the Rings, but for me, it's like a fantasy touchstone. I don't necessarily.
Yeah.
It's so bound by so much. Like, I don't necessarily want to play in that playground. Like, I'm more excited for that Free League book, the space one that is being developed. That hasn't hit Kickstarter yet, but has some extremely good aesthetics. So, and actually, I should have talked about that. Morkborg was a bit of an influence on Zone Secundus, of like the sheer just brutality and despair of it.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I don't really need to buy it.
Someone else in the comments is saying that they've mentioned the Hickatrix in the link with that's one of the riffs, right?
That's the big one.
The riff, the main one.
That Abaddon opened, and
I'll be honest. Like I feel I've read very little.
Hickatrix Maledictum, maybe.
Yeah, that word is just like a healed over scar, right?
I didn't know that.
Hickatrix or whatever, the scar of a healed wound, I believe. Pretty sure that's what that means. But regardless,
I didn't know.
Like, I guess
also this group of people here, we're not medical doctors. We're the other kind of doctors.
Ask me about bacteria, but not medical scars.
Yeah, Cicatrix maledictum.
Okay.
I suppose the Bacillus maledictum, that sounds like a cool disease. Doesn't sound like a warp rift.
So I guess I should read. I feel the new lore that I read was the release of the last rule book, which is where I think they introduced most of that stuff. So I have the newest rule book, which I guess I should read that.
The art in there is gorgeous. I was like it's one of their newer artists. I follow him on Instagram. Like, his stuff is stunning. Like, it's really, really evocative.
Oh yeah. So Var in the chat here mentioned that they actually got that LP Kickstarter, or like the LP Morkborg released. And has that actually been released formally? Like, I know the Kickstarter's obviously over, but have they shipped that stuff out yet? I don't
think so. I mean, I backed it too, because like I back
all Morkborg things.
I mean, not the original one, because I didn't know it at the time, but
I feel it's a cool idea that it's sort of an album with like music and such, but also a setting with like and using the gatefold LP as like a dungeon master screen and all that stuff. I feel it's pretty cool as a fun idea and a good way to incorporate all the musical elements and stuff that sort of inspired them. But that just general idea seems like a cool thing that could even be done with Zone Secundus. You could come up with like a little scenario or something that other people could play or whatever to kind of suggest, you know, what's part of your vision is, and make some music or something to go along with it, or a Spotify playlist.
I'll have to talk to Red Wet Skeleton some more. Get him on board. I also need to pressure him to do his Gene Stealer cult idea. But no, that would be fantastic. That would be really cool. I can definitely recommend some music off the top of my head, and I will make an influence post. Anything released by Cryo Chamber, like any of the like weird drone, industrial drone, anything by Locrian, especially the Crystal World album.
Yeah,
but any of their albums are just super like. They're great. They're very atmospheric, but they make you super uncomfortable. Like the body as well, for something a little bit more on a harsher side. All the Waters of the World Shall Turn to Blood. Fantastic album, and something I also feel is a big influence to me. But I'll do a post of these. But I really recommend listening to those. But yeah, musically, and I want to see everyone else's inspiration for it as well.
Oh, actually, so you mentioned Locrian's album, The Crystal World. So that has. The artwork for the album cover is by Justin Bartlett, who is a great illustrator that does a lot of work for metal album covers and whatnot. He recently learned that he has stage 4 colorectal cancer and has a GoFundMe page, which if anybody likes his work and could spare some money,
that's a good shout.
It's like that. The album cover for The Crystal World is one of my favorite album covers. Like, he's great.
Just absolutely, like it's so sort of, it's grim and sort of almost melancholy as well at the same time.
Very much so.
The Justin Bartlett also did an image for some shirts for The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing.
Oh,
it's great.
Ooh, I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, any inspiration, like I'd love to do eventually, like Tears of Envy, amazing little cassette tape
awesome.
kind of thing that she does is incredible. Like if I was really mad and I had a lot of time on my hands, I'd love to produce like a little cassette, like a gaming cassette that you can kind of I don't know who would have a cassette player, but a gaming cassette and like a little.
I have a cassette player.
Okay, well, I've got one customer right here. Look for the Zone Secundus Kickstarter cassette Kickstarter soon. Yeah, no, I'm not promising that. But yeah, like I really just want to. Like that'd be super cool to explore.
Kickstarter to go along with your upcoming Patreon, you said?
Oh yeah, my Patreon coffee and yeah.
Pretty cool.
You can buy exclusive lore posts on Patreon from me.
Oh, that's the spirit.
Of course. But yeah, it's great. Like, and this stream, like, I'm excited to see people talk about it on the stream and what they're that seemed like that we're getting some enthusiasm in the chat, which is always really nice to see.
Yeah, the more the merrier.
Definitely.
Well, so how's everyone feeling? I think we can probably soon end this stream. Like, I have other things I have to do today, and like, I guess it's pretty early for us here in America.
Yeah, well, thank you for getting up so early. I really appreciate. Well, it's not super early, but it's still early for a weekend, so I really appreciate it.
Yeah, like getting up at 6:20 is like when I get up for work.
Oh, okay. No, but I really appreciate it. It's about lunchtime for me at the moment.
That's
so
not bad.
Yeah,
that's not bad.
And then I will spray some of my corpse grinder cult to try and see if I can do an all red color scheme, which is a challenge I've set myself.
I think
That
you
sounds
can do
fun.
it. Red's a good color.
Mm-hmm.
Gonna have to look at Google some Viscera. That's gonna be fun. Get on the list or something like that.
Break out your Tamiya X27 clear red.
Oh,
That's
I was just going to use blood for the blood god and
this
a
is
lot
what
of flesh tearers red.
This is what you need. This acrylic
Also,
paint.
I feel that if you're gonna do it like this stuff all red, you should really experiment with different textures and stuff. Some of them being matte, some not. To like try to
So
add.
get some of this X27 clear red.
I'm gonna mix blues. I'm gonna mix greens and stuff into it, and do different areas and things like that. So yeah, it's not just going to be one flat tone, because then that would be a very boring model.
Be careful if you do get some of the clear red. I think it's not very healthy for you.
Yeah, I saw them. I went into a local hobby. Well, it's a hobby big chain called I can't remember what it's called, like Hobby Store or Craft Warehouse or some generic name. And I saw the Tamiya paints, and I was like, "Oh, Adam recommended it to me." And I picked one up, and it was just the amount of health warnings on them, and I was like, "I'll stick to my nice water-based acrylics, thank you."
Yeah.
I've used it very little thus far, but it's the only one of them that I have.
Well, I've heard it does fantastic results.
Yeah, I used it on... Oh, I think on the Blood Bowl model that I painted, the blood was from that. The Chaos Warrior on his little, like, punch spike of sorts.
Oh, yeah, for your Blitz Bowl thing.
Yeah. Worth looking into. Avar says X27 and some gloss black primer makes it great and gory. That's cool.
Oh, thanks, Var. I'll check it out.
Yeah, so I think if you don't have to get a lot of that paint, but I think the clear red is worth looking into, particularly if you are doing all red. Like, it's a very different red.
Oh, well, I was thinking of buying some incredibly expensive miniature oil paints that come in a fancy black box and posting about it, but
I mean, you could do that too, but
do all of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Tamiya stuff, I think also, since it's like an acrylic based, an oil based acrylic, must airbrush really well and is less likely to clog airbrushes and stuff because it's so thin and dries quickly. So people like it for that reason.
Oh yeah, I can definitely. I don't know. I like airbrushes, though I haven't used my airbrush in ages because I got really frustrated with it. But I don't know. I've just been really enjoying doing brush painting, like lots of brush painting, like especially doing micro texturing on models and like cloth with like is so satisfying.
Yeah, I like it too. Well, so I guess.
All right. Well, maybe.
Yeah.
We call this to a close. I guess thanks everyone for joining us and listening, commenting and talking in the chat, and particularly Nick, thanks for being here. It's always good to have you.
It's always a pleasure to be on. You just have to shout and I'll be on here. So
I'm sure we'll have you back, hopefully sooner rather than later, to talk more about the setting.
Oh, definitely. I'm expecting Greg to have just pulled out a full wall band by the next time I'm on.
Oh, yeah, you know me and building all that stuff.
Yep, I do know you, and I have high hopes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Keep enjoying the hobby, and we will talk to you all again soon.
Yep. See you, everybody.
Over and out.
Yeah.